This is the first video in the Word Unit C, which is going to be formatting text and paragraphs. Our objectives for this unit on there is going to be to format with fonts, copy formats using the Format Painter, change line and paragraph spacing, to align paragraphs, working with tabs, working with indents, adding bullets and numbering, adding borders and shading, and adding footnotes and endnotes. We are going to be starting in on page Word 50, which is entitled Formatting with Fonts. And formatting text with different fonts is a quick and powerful way to enhance the appearance of a document. A font is a complete set of characters with the same typeface or design. Some most commonly used fonts are things such as Arial, Times New Roman, Calibri, Courier on there, but there are hundreds more others fonts that are out there with specific designs and feel to them. Another way to alter the impact of text is to increase or decrease its font size, which, as we can see right here, we know that when these numbers go up, this font gets bigger. When the numbers go down, the fonts get smaller. And what that 11 is, that's what we call a point, or an 11-point font. And a point is 1/72 of an inch. So to kind of break this down a little bit, if you would have a size 72 or a 72-point font, you would have 1-inch letters on there. Now, from course sites underneath the Word Unit C for the walkthrough, you should be able to download this file. If you haven't done so, pause the video and do so right now. Otherwise, this is the file that we're going to be working with. And notice that the file is very plain, very kind of boring to it. There's lots of good information, but it's not visually appealing on there. We're going to modify this to make it look better. So once you have this opened up here, go ahead and let's save this as, and this is step 1, go ahead and save this into your My Documents as Last Minute Deals. And click on Save. Now when we take a look at this, we need to notice the name of the font used in the document, in which that is Calibri, which is right up here. That's our font that we have. Calibri is displayed in the font list box in the font group. The word body, which is next to it in the font list box, indicates that Calibri is the font used for the body text in the current theme, and which in this case is the default theme. And a theme is ultimately a related set of fonts, colors, styles, and effects that is applied to the entire document to give it a cohesive appearance. The font size, as we mentioned earlier, appears next to it, and that indicates the font size in points. Step 2 tells us that we're going to scroll the document to get a feel for its contents. So when you take a look here and just scroll down, just kind of get an idea where some things are at on there. And like I said, very boring, very kind of plain document. When you get down to the bottom, you can always use the keyboard shortcut of Control and Home to get back up to the very top of the document. Now the next thing we're going to do is in step 2 is it tells us to press our Control and then A key. And that Control A selects the entire document. Then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to click the font list arrow in the font group. Now there are two types of fonts, and we have what we call serif fonts, which has a small stroke called a serif that ends the characters, and it makes it look just a little bit more fancy. So if you see like a letter A or a letter T and they have little things at the end of it there, that's what we call a serif. On there. And if you take a look at Times New Roman, see the little T right here, the T right there has these little lines coming across it on there, and that's what we call a serif font. A sans serif font on there is one that do not have a serif on there, and that would be such things like this Trebuchet MS. Notice it doesn't have the little extra lines and everything that Times New Roman has for it. On step 3, it tells us to drag our pointer slowly down the font names in the font list, and to use the scroll box to scroll down the font list. And one thing that you should notice is that whenever I move my mouse pointer here, we see what we call the live preview, in which notice how my font in my document appears to be changing on there as I move my mouse pointer. Now as I scroll down more, all the fonts are alphabetically arranged. So we want to, and it tells us we want to click on Garamond on there. So we need to go down to the G's. And as we notice here that there are lots of different fonts, and they give you a sample of it here, but if you want to see what your document looks like, just point to one of these on there and it will show you in a live preview what it does. There's Garamond, and we want to go ahead and click on that. And that will actually change our font, because with the live preview it shows you what it will look like, but it will not accept it until you click it. Step 4 tells us that we're going to click the font size list arrow in the font group. So if we click on this little arrow right here, notice that we have a different set of numbers, and each one of these numbers is a font size, and it's once again measured in points. And once again, points are 1/72 of an inch. And it tells us that we're going to drag our pointer slowly up and down the font list, and then we're ultimately going to click on 12. Once again, here's the live preview again. It shows us what our document looks like, and there it is in 1-inch letters, size 72 point font. But we want to click on 12. And that increases it up ever so slightly. Now, of course, when formatting a document, make sure that you pick fonts and font sizes that will help out the document's purpose and that agrees with the document's purpose. On step 5, we're going to select the title, Quest Specialty Travel Last Minute Travel Deals, on there. And it's these 2 lines of text that's right here. So we want to select that right there. And then once we have that, we're going to click on the font list arrow and change this to that Trebuchet MS. So you'll need to scroll down to the T's, and there is Trebuchet MS. Once you point to it and then click on it. Next, it tells us to click the font size list arrow, which currently says 12, and we're going to click on 22, so we're making this just a little bit bigger. And then finally, we're going to add an attribute to this on there, and that is the bold. So we're going to click on bold here. And what that does is that just formats the title of our document here for the Quest Specialty Travel on there, and that makes it stand out a little bit more. On step 6, it tells us that we want to click the font color list arrow, and the font color is right up here. It has the letter A on there, and with a color underneath it. Generally, by default, it's going to be red on there. That you can see that's the little bar underneath it. If we take a look at the screen tip, it tells us there's the font color. Now, by default, the color is black for the text. However, we see that there's lots of different colors that we can choose from. And this is the gallery of colors. It indicates the set of theme colors in a range of tints and shades, as well as a set of standard colors. You can point to a color in the gallery to preview it on there, and then you can click on it to select it. So you can move this around. You can notice how the colors are changing as I move my mouse. Of course, to use a different set of theme colors, you have to click the Page Layout tab, and then click the Theme Colors button on the Themes group, and then select a different color set. On step 7, it tells us we want to click the blue accent 1 color shown that is in figure C2 on page Word 51 out of your textbook. And of course, to choose the proper color, generally what you want to do is you want to point to it, and the screen tip will tell you what the color is. And if we go over to the 5th one on there on the very top row, and I put my mouse pointer over it, it should say blue accent 1, and that's the correct color that we want. So when you click on it, away goes the little dialog box, and then now the font has been changed. Especially, you can take a look at that when we deselect the text, and you notice there's the color change on there. On step 8, it tells us that we want to select the heading Rosh Hashanah Desert Safari, which that is down here just below the trip, dates, and cost on there. So we want to select this Rosh Hashanah Desert Safari. Then it tells us using the mini toolbar. So if I use the mini toolbar here on there, so when I select this, there's my mini toolbar, and when I have that, it tells me I want to change the click on the font list arrow. So I'm going to change the font from Garamond, and I'm going to change that to Trebuchet MS. Now, one great thing is, if you take a look at this font list arrow, you'll see your most recently used fonts closer up toward the top. And since we've already used that, we don't have to scroll all the way down through the all fonts to get to that list. So we can click on Trebuchet MS on there, and then we're going to go ahead and we can continue using the mini toolbar. If it disappears on you, just right click on it and you can get that mini toolbar back. And then we're going to click on the font size list arrow, and we're going to click on 14. And then finally we're going to change the color of this, and of course notice the color switched on the font color from the red block underneath it to the blue block which we just used. And typically when you click on that, it's going to use the last color that you used. Now if you haven't used a color yet, it would be the color red. But what we're going to do is we're going to click on this and we're going to change this color to a dark blue text 2. And we see that it is in the 4th column and that 1st row. So we're going to click on that. And then finally we're going to make this bold. And that, notice how that will change our font on there. So the heading formatted is now in 14-point Trebuchet MS bold with a dark blue color. And notice that when you use the buttons on the mini toolbar to format the text, you cannot live preview it, the formatting options in the document. So whenever I'm making changes on here, if I would reselect this again and go back to my font list arrow, notice as I move my mouse pointer, the font doesn't change. So the live preview is only if you're not using the mini toolbar. Up here it will do it in the font group, but in the mini toolbar, no. Next, press your Control and Home key, and that will get your insertion point back up to the top, and then you want to go ahead and save your document. Now if you take a look on page Word 51, it does mention something on there about adding a drop cap. And that's a fun way to illustrate a document with fonts on there. And typically you may see those like in newspapers and everything. And a drop cap is ultimately just a large initial capital letter, which is used to set off the first paragraph of an article. And to create a drop cap, you need to place the insertion point in the paragraph you want to format, and then click on your Insert tab. So let's assume just for a moment I'm going to want to have this as a large F right here. So to do this, I'm going to have to place my insertion point in the paragraph, and then I need to click on Insert. Once I go to Insert, notice that right here in the text group there is the drop cap. I can click on that, and notice that if I click on Dropped, it's going to make that F really big, and it goes down for 3 lines. Now I can change that underneath the drop cap option, or I can also make it in margin, in which the F goes off to the side over there. And so that is one way to add in that drop cap. If I take a look at the drop cap options, you can see that you can change the font of it, how many lines you want it to drop, and the distance it is from the text. And that concludes page Word 50 and 51, formatting with fonts. On the next video, we are going to be talking about copying formats using the Format Painter.